Okay, this is lecture number 19 and we will start with the population topic today. Earlier we had finished the industries one. We had completed the industries and minerals. Okay, and in the population, the first thing that is very important to understand is the growth pattern of population. See, we are doing the Indian geography. So the general thing about the population, that is the population theories, these will be discussed separately, right? So in this in this lecture class, we are just focused on the Indian population and different aspects of the Indian population that we will be discussing, whether it is literacy, okay, whether it is the age structure of Indian population, age dependency of Indian population, and the different patterns and the decadal population growth of the India. So these are the things that we will be discussing instead of the population theories and the consequences thereof. So we are first starting with the growth pattern of the Indian population, that how the Indian population has grown over the time, right? So the first, actually, we will divide this pattern in the four phases. Phase number one is the period of the stagnant population. This is period of stagnant population, and this period we will do for this is till 1921. Okay, so we will divide into we will study this growth in the four phases, 1 to 4, right? So we are starting with the first phase, that is called the period of the stagnant population, and the second phase is the period of slow population growth. This is from 1921 to 51, and the phase number 3 is the period of accelerated population growth. And this we will study from 1951 to 1981, and the fourth phase is the period of accelerated population growth with definite sign of slowdown. Period of accelerated population growth with definite sign of slowing down. This is after 1991, right? So in these four phases, the population of India has grown. Basically, to understand these four phases, what we must first understand, although we will discuss the demographic transition theory separately, but just to understand these phases, let us discuss the demographic transition theory very brief, so that we can do justice to this topic that we are discussing here. So the demographic transition theory says that the population growth is the factor, or is the product of basically the two entities. One is the mortality rate, another is the fertility rate. Okay, it is affected by these two. So how the population growth is affected by the mortality rate and fertility rate, this relationship is given by the demographic transition theory. So first of all, what the demographic transition theory says, let us divide this time period, this time scale, in four parts. So as per the demographic transition theory, in the first phase, this is the first phase. In the first phase, both mortality rate and the fertility rate are very high. Okay, because the society is very traditional, there is no new medical invention. Society is very traditional, so both the mortality rate and fertility rate are very high, right? But as we enter in the second phase, this is the first phase. As we enter in the second phase, mortality declines sharply because of new inventions in the medical field, whether it is the agriculture revolution, industrial revolution, new medical technologies. This leads to the rapid decline of mortality rate. So this is mortality rate, MR. Okay, but the fertility rate remains high. This is fertility rate for fertility rate. And because fertility rate remains high, so this phase is the phase of population explosion. There are reasons that why fertility rate remains high despite decrease in mortality rate, because of the attitudinal changes. See, the fertility rate is largely the function of the attitude. So as we are transiting from first phase to second phase, the attitude of the society remains same, which needs time to adjust and change. Okay, so as we move forward, that will also change. So what happens in the phase number 3, the fertility rates keep on declining, but it is not declining as fast as mortality rate. So there comes a stage where the fertility rate also start not declining very fast. So this is the phase 3 only, but in the phase 3 only the fertility rate declines very fast. Okay, or in the late, we can say in the late 3 stage. And in the 4th stage, what happens again, the fertility rate and the mortality these becomes very low, but the mortality rate starts increasing in this. So this is the 4th phase. Okay, so this is how the population growth is the factor of fertility rate and mortality rate. So these type of conditions are witnessed basically up to this. These conditions are witnessed in the developing world. Sorry. So these conditions are witnessed in developing world, but these later conditions where the fertility rate has declined enough and mortality rate has started picking up, particularly in the old age population, this is the case of developed world. This is very brief of the demographic transition theory, and we will discuss the different in detail the demographic transition theory. What are the factors in addition to the fertility rate and mortality rate that affects the population growth, and how they changes, right? So all the factors we will discuss when we will discuss the population theory, because population theories are numerous. Whether it is the Malthus theory, we will discuss the Malthus theory separately, then Marx theory of population, then Arson-Dumont theory of population. Okay, and there are number of other theories as well. Natural law theories, David Ricardo theories. So number of theories, population theory we will study separately. Okay, here what we are doing, we will analyze the population growth of India on the basis of demographic transition theory. That's why we discuss the DTM in a very brief. So these 4 phases we will analyze first. Okay, on the basis of demographic transition model. So what the demographic transition model says, that in the initial phase, the first phase of India, again for India as well, the fertility rate and the mortality rate both were very high. Okay, but and this was the breaking point. This is the 1921 as per the demographic transition model, right? As India entered the second stage, fertility rate remained high, but the mortality rate declined sharply, right? And in the second stage, what happened? The fertility rate, although was declining, but very small decline was there. So this point, it was 45%. So fertility and mortality we are saying 45, and this is 41 fertility rate, and the mortality rate declined to 27%. So sharp decline in the mortality rate, right? Here again, this keeps on declining. We are in the third stage only, and we are subdividing the third stage, as I said, early third stage and the later third stage. This is third stage. It is second, right? So in the third stage, what happened? This period when we entered in the third stage, this was 1951, and in 1951, India entered in the third stage of the demographic transition, right? Here in the third stage, this is the 1951. So in 1981, and in the 1981, the mortality rate reduced further to 12 parts per thousand. So this is parts per thousand, not percentage. Parts per thousand, and this is the fertility rate. This reduced to 36%. This parts per thousand, right? And here it is the what we are saying. This is 2011, and in 2011, fertility rate declined to 19%, is 19 parts per thousand, and mortality rate declined to 8 parts per thousand. So we will study basically in the four phases that I said. From first phase we will study this, in the second phase we will study this part, third phase we will study after 1981, and then we will study after 1981. So basically from 1901 to 1921, India's population growth was recorded to be 5.42%. So this was the population growth rate of India, right? And in this phase, in 1921, if you see, 1921 population of India basically was 251 million, right? And this 1921 is also called as the demographic divide of India. Basically, you need to understand that why in this stage the fertility rate and the mortality rate were very high. The reasons were very simple, that India was very traditional society. India was traditional society, right? Mortality rate were very high. There were low medical technology, and awareness regarding hygiene and these things was very low. So all these factors led to very high mortality rate, and high mortality rate often led to insecurity in the families. So the family ended up producing and procreating more children. This led to high fertility rate during the initial period up to 1921. So this is the first phase of the first analysis from 1901 to 1921. Moving on to the second phase, that is second stage that we were saying. In stage number 2, what happened? In stage number 2 started from 1921, and we will analyze up to 1951. In 1921, Indian population was 251 million, as we said, 251 million. Up to 1951, it increased to 361 million. So there was close to 110 million in increase in the Indian population, and this occurred because India entered in the age of receding pandemics. This is stage is called the age of receding pandemics. So in age of receding pandemics, what happened? The life expectancy increased. Life expectancy, it increased. Why life expectancy increased? Because India imported the medical technologies. India imported medical technologies, right? Medical technologies. But although life expectancy increased and hence the mortality rate reduced sharply. So if you see the mortality rate, it reduced sharply from 45% parts per thousand to 27 parts per thousand, right? But but the fertility rate remains very high. So fertility rate, if you see, 45 per thousand to 41 per thousand in this. So see, the reduction in the fertility rate was not that much as it was in the mortality rate, because the fertility rate, as I said, is more of a function of the attitude, more of a function of attitude, and it takes time to change. So society continues to be backward, patriarchal, and orthodoxy traditional looking society. This mainly influence the this influences these factor influences the fertility rate. So society remains backwardness of society. This remained the large region of basically having the less reduction in the fertility rate as compared to the mortality rate, which is more of a function of very no sim very we can say the or import of the medical technologies. So that is basically the reason for mortality reduction. Okay, so this was the second phase from 1921 to 1951. Now when we move on to the next phase, that is from 1951 to 1981, this is the age of expanding population. From 1951, if you see, from 1951 to 81, in this phase, in 1951, if you see, the Indian population was close to 361 million. and in the 1981 Indian population increased to 683 million, more than, this is close to 90% increase in the population. And the reasons for this expansion were many. For example, India undertook the community development program. India undertook the land reforms. India undertook the, what we can say, the green revolution program. Okay, expansion of the irrigation facilities. Then the medical camps to the rural areas were taken. So all these factors reduced the mortality rate. So mortality rate again reduced very fast. Mortality rate reduction. But the fertility rate again remained high because the society remained backward, and there was very meager attempt by the government to change the attitude of the population. For example, if you see the sex ratio in India, sex ratio, it remains poor. It remains poor. However, the mortality rate and the access to advanced medical facilities, that increased with time. So this access reduced the mortality rate, but the sex ratio, which largely is determined by the attitude of the society, that remains very low, and the societal attitude was not changed over the time. So these factors again led to the, what we can say, the reduction in the mortality rate, but the fertility rate was again not reduced that fast. So if you see in the third phase, in this phase only, here from 1951 to 1981, this fertility rate reduced from 41 to 36, not that much reduction, but mortality rate witnessed sharp reduction from 27 to 12%. So if you see here in this phase 1951 to 81, the mortality rate, it witnessed a sharp reduction from, what was the figure, 36% to 12%. However, the fertility rate, it witnessed very small or marginal reduction, that is from 41% to 36%. And the reasons were very simple. The reasons for this marginal increase were again the societal backwardness. Right. So this was the phase from 1951 to 1981. Now we are moving on to the next phase, that is from 1981 to 1981 onwards. So from 1981 onwards, in this phase, if you see, the population growth has reduced, but the overall number continued to increase because the population base was very big in India from earlier phases. So the, here if you see, the fertility rate started declining. Fertility rate started declining because mortality rate had declined to sufficiently low level. Mortality rate had declined to sufficiently low levels, and this triggered change in attitude. Basically, the here as well you can classify more particularly the migration phenomena from rural area to urban area was very fast during this time, and this migration particularly in urban area changed the mindset, and the families became more conscious of having having less number of children, because the burden of the child education, health, and many other burdens had increased, and the families had moved from the joint family system to nuclear family system. This increased the aspirational levels. So this again forced the families to think of having more number of children. So this again triggered attitudinal change of having low number of children. So again we can say that fertility rate reduced. So there are number of factors which worked post 1981 in reduction of the fertility rate. So what we can say that although fertility rate declined post 1981, but the population growth kept on increasing because the because base was very high, base of population was very high, population was very large or very large. Okay, but for first time in 2011 census we added less number of people as compared to 2001 census. So if you see, for example, in 2001 census we added 182 million people, 182 million people, but in 2011 census we added 181 million people. So for first time in 2011 census, we can definitely say not only just there are signs of reduction in the population growth, but there are visible patterns in the reduction of the population, as we can see the aggregate number of addition of the people in the population, right? So this was basically the deep analysis or detailed analysis of how the population of India has changed and the functioned over the time. Basically we analyzed from 1901 till today. So this was the population growth analysis of India, but what we analyzed is the sequentially from 1901 up to the 2011 particularly. But if you see, as per 2011 census, different regions witnessed different growth. The 2011 census recorded the decadal population growth of 17.64%. This was the national average. This was a national average. Okay, but this was not uniform. So the different regions had the different population growth. So on the spatial pattern, if you analyze, this was the temporal pattern which earlier we said. If on the spatial scale you analyze, there are different regions which have the population growth which is more than 17.64%. There are the regions which have moderate population growth, and there are regions in India which have the less than 10% decadal population growth. So we will analyze the spatial pattern of the growth in these three patterns basically. So the first type of regions are the high population growth regions. So if you see the high population growth regions, where the population growth is more than 17.64%. So in this, first is the union territories, and in union territories also Dadar and Nagar Haveli, DNH, Delhi, Puducherry. These witnessed, for example, Delhi witnessed the decadal population growth of 20%. DNH witnessed the population growth of the 50%. And the reason for this high, more than average decadal population growth was very simple: in migration. So in migration was very high in these areas, in these urban towns. So this was the main reason. The second type of the regions which had the population above 17.64%, these were the small hilly states. Small hilly states. For example, in Meghalaya. In Meghalaya, the decadal average population growth was 7.8%. Right. Similarly, in Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, Manipur. In these states, the decadal population growth was more than 17.6%. And the reasons given was that these states are mostly tribal states. And in the tribal regions, the tribals have the high fertility rate because of the historical reasons. So tribals have some historical reasons for having high fertility rate. So they are not affected by many modern factors which are responsible for decrease in fertility rate. So this is the main reason that they have high fertility rate, right? This was the second. But if these are the two regions, although we will study the C and D as well, but if you see in A and B, these states have less aggregate population. These regions have less aggregate population. So even if the decadal population growth in these region is very high, more than 17.64%, because of less aggregate population, the overall addition overall addition to population by these regions is very low. Overall addition is very low because of the low aggregate population of these regions. But when you move on to the states like Gujarat, again the C in this where the population growth is more than 17.2, for example Gujarat, Haryana. Okay, in this state the population growth rate is again more than 17%, but the main reason in these states is in migration from eastern states, right? This is the about Gujarat and Haryana, right? Moving on to the D, that is where the population is more than, these are the EAG state, empowered action group states, and these include states like Bihar. Okay, 25% decadal population growth. Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Rajasthan, MP, UP, Uttarakhand. In these states, the population growth was more than 17.6%, and the reason was their underdeveloped medical infrastructure, and this led to high infant mortality rate, high maternal mortality rate, and because of this, the insecurity which is produced led to high fertility rate. Okay, now as we said, the earlier these two A and B, these were not having high aggregate population, so even if the decadal population growth is more than 17.6%, the overall addition is very low. But in case of C and D, these states are heavily populated, so because of the high population density of these states, even the marginal percentage increase will add large number of people. So when these states C and D had more than 17.6, 17.4%, because of high population density, they added a large number of people to the population. So this is the main concern. So C and D states, group C and D states, they are more particularly the D type states, they are of more concern and should be focused more by the government. So this is the first category state, and in the first category state we did the states which have the population growth more than national average, that is 17.64%. Moving on to the B category, that is the states which are having the population growth between the 10 and the 17.64%. So the medium growth category. So in the medium growth category, we will study from 10% to 17.6%. So in this state, in this we are first see, for example, Chandigarh. Andhra Pradesh. Population growth of Andhra Pradesh was, I think, close to 11%, right? Then you had the West Bengal in this, you had the Assam in this, you had Tamil Nadu in this, you had Odisha in this, okay, Maharashtra as well, right? Sikkim, Tripura, Punjab in this. So these were the states where the population growth was medium category, that is 10 to 7.6%. And the reason for this medium category population growth basically was that the economic development in these states, in these states was accompanied by the social development plus active government intervention plus right? So this is the category B states. Moving on to the category C states, where the population growth was less than 10%. So category C states, where the low category states, as they are called, low growth category states. states, right? That is less than 10% population growth. These include Kerala, okay, Andaman Nicobar, Lakshadweep, and Nagaland, right? See, Kerala completed its demographic transition in 1981. Okay, it completed demographic transition. It was the first state to complete its demographic transition in India. Okay, in case of Nagaland, there is a peculiar situation. When you see in 2001 census, decadal population growth for Nagaland was shown 64%. And in 2011, if you see, decadal population growth for Nagaland was shown minus 0.47%. Now you can see the blunder here. From 64%, how can the population reduce in 10 years to minus 47%? And the reason given for this mismatch was number one, that in 2001 there was overestimation. Number one reason given was there was overestimation, which was corrected in 2011 census. And the reason number two that was given, that large out migration happened out of the state. Large out migration happened. Okay, these were the two reasons basically given for this kind of mismatch or peculiar situation in case of Assam, and the same happened in case of Andaman Nicobar and Lakshadweep. So we said that there are the three types of the states. Okay, and each state had the different population growth type. Each category had different population growth. So there are the different issues when each state, this group of the states have the different issues, different population growth. So they will definitely be having the different issues. So these different issues would definitely need to be tackled with a different kind of policy intervention. So one uniform policy cannot suit the Uttar Pradesh as well as the Ladakh or the Lakshadweep. So this is the situation here, and this was the first topic, that analysis of the population of India, that how Indian population is distributed and how has it grown in space and time. Okay, the next topic that we are discussing here is the population age structure. Population age structure. Population age structure studies the population, okay, the proportion of population which is present in different age group. Proportion of population in different age groups. For example, in case of India, if you see, let us divide the age brackets from 0 to 14, okay, 14 to 16, 60 and more than 60. Okay, the population in 0 to 14 is 30% of the Indian population. From 40 to 60, it is 62% population. More than 60, it is close to 8%. So this is population. So this is what the population age structure studies, that how much proportion of population is concentrated in which bracket, age bracket. Now why is it important to study the different age groups and the population which is concentrated in different age group? Because by studying the population age structure, you would come to know the number of jobs to be created. Okay, more is the population in the 14 to 60 bracket, that means you have to create more number of jobs. Okay, by studying the population structure, you will come to know the social sector spending. For example, if the population is more in plus 60 age bracket, that means you have to spend more on the social security scheme, pension, etc. By studying the population structure, you will come to know how much to invest in the child care activities. Okay, if the population in this age bracket 0 to 14 is more, that means you have to invest more in the child care activities. Okay, so this is the importance of population age structure. And in Indian case, this population age structure is not again uniform across the states. right? Different states have the different age brackets for this population. For example, if you see, this is the demographic transition model for population growth, and this is stage 1, 2, 3 and 4. As I said, the Kerala has completed its demographic transition, so it lies in the stage 4. And in the stage 4, what happens basically, first of all, if you see the stage number 2 and the stage number 3, let us take an example. In the stage number 2, the states like Bihar lies. In the stage number 3, states like Haryana lies. Okay, and in the stage number 4, the states like Kerala lies. Okay, in the stage number 2, the population pyramid is something like that. Again, it is this is the shape of the age pyramid, population pyramid. Population pyramid in the stage 1 is widest at the base. Okay, and it is the narrow at the top. So the we can say that the 60 plus population is very low when you are in the stage 1, but the base, that is the fertility, this represent the very high fertility rate. Base represent the high number of young age children, less than 5, the children who have the age less than 5. Okay, so this is the, we can say, the young age. This is the adult age. Okay, working age population, and this is old age. So we will divide the age pyramid in these 3 types. So in case of Bihar, if you study, the it lies in this thing, stage number 2, because the fertility rate keeps on remains high, and number of reasons are for that. Because of the high fertility rate, the base remains wide, but it keeps on shifting upwards. As you move in Haryana case, the base further moves more upwards, because the fertility rate has declined and Haryana has entered in a demographic dividend stage. So the population in the younger age, that is in the working age bracket, is high, but in the working age bracket the population is high, and below 14 the population has decreased, right? When you move into the Kerala state, the age pyramid, this age pyramid, bell of the age pyramid again moves upwards. Okay, so the population density is, the population pyramid is something like that in case of Kerala. This is in case of Kerala. So the population has moved up in the age bracket, right? So we can say that the demographic dividend is shrinking and the working age population is shrinking in Kerala case. So the different states in India have the different kind of the population age structure. So uniformity again in case of India is not present here as well. Now if you analyze some of the parameters in case of the Haryana, Kerala and Bihar. So this was the Bihar case, this was case of Bihar, this was case of Haryana, this was case of Kerala. Okay, if you see in case of Kerala, the fertility rate in case of Kerala, it is 1.8, right? Fertility rate in case of Haryana, it is 2.3. okay, but fertility rate in case of Bihar is 3.2. so you can see that fertility rate is very high. That's why base in case of Bihar is more, while base has reduced in case of the Kerala. Similarly, if you see other demographic factor, that is, let us say, population growth. Population growth in case of Kerala is 4.9%. Population growth in case of Haryana was 19.9%, and in case of Bihar it was 25%. And the reasons were because of high fertility rate and the early stage in the demographic model in case of Bihar. So this was the population growth. Similarly, if you see the literacy rate in case of male in Kerala, the literacy rate was 96%. In case of females, the literacy rate was 91%. Okay, In Haryana, if you see the male and female literacy rate were 85% and 65%. Okay, this high gap between male and female literacy in case of Haryana represents the patriarchal mindset. Okay, nothing else. And when you see in case of Bihar, the male and female literacy rate is 73% and 53%. Male and female literacy rate. Okay, so this is the another demographic factor that can be seen varying widely between the states of the India. Okay, another demographic factors can also be seen. For example, sex ratio. Sex ratio in case of the Kerala is 1084. Sex ratio in case of Haryana is 9. Basically, if you see, in case with the 2011 census, it was very low, 879. Although it has improved over the time, okay, but it is very low, very bad in case of the 2011 census. And when you see in Bihar, the sex ratio in case of Bihar was 918. 918. So this sex ratio is another demographic parameter which can be analyzed. Similarly, the migration can be analyzed. Haryana basically witnesses in migration. Okay. Bihar basically the witnesses out migration, and Kerala witnesses both in migration as well as out migration. Out migration is towards the Gulf states, and in migration from the northern states. So these are the different demographic parameters which can be analyzed when we witness is the variability in the demographic age structure or the age population age structure of the different states. So in case of India, we can say that one uniform age structure does not present. Bihar has its separate age structure. Okay, the population from 0 to 14, 14 to 65, 60 and 65 plus is this combination is very unique in case of Bihar, as it is different in case of Kerala and Haryana. Okay, so this was the topic of the population age structure. Okay, so we are ending the class here on the population age structure. We will discuss the next social issues topic, basically related to, although they are related to the population only, the topics like literacy rates, the topics like the age dependency, population age dependency, right? These factors in the next class, right? So this is in this class, and please subscribe the channel before closing the class. This is a request. Okay, so we'll start with the remaining topics of the population in the next class. So thank you.